Okay, I started recording us. Gabe apologized. He said he couldn't come today, so we'll record it for him also. 1 second. Okay, forget it. Okay. So let's look at let's finish the Gemara that we started. Okay, in Gimel Amud Bet. Yeah, we did a whole lot of Gimel Amud Bet. Let me remind the people, what did we study in Gimel Amud Bet? In Gimel Amud Bet, we studied, 1 second. Yeah, in Gimel Amud Bet, we started a new law, a chiddush of Rabbi Yonatan. Rabbi Yonatan had a chiddush that in order to bring the offering of the bull, there is a need. Yeah, Rabbi Yonatan said, look at the second row of Gimel Amud Bet again. Amar Rabbi Yonatan, mea she'ashvu lehorot, ein chayavin ad sheyoru kulan. And he learns it from the verse, Im kol adat Yisrael yishgu ad shishgu kulan. Rabbi Yonatan says two chidushin. Rabbi Yonatan says, A, that there is a possibility to add dayanim on Sanhedrin, and that's not trivial. Let's say the Rambam seems to rule the opposite way around, based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that 71 is a set number that one cannot add to it. I'll give you the example. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that, let's say there are 36, 35, but 36 that are convincing and 35 that are ruling in favor of the person. Okay, 36, 35. So we know that a majority of one is not enough to convict. A majority of one is enough in order to, what's the opposite of convicting? You told me that last week.
Acquit.
Acquit. Yeah, a majority of one is enough to acquit, but not enough to convict. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin actually asks, what's going on when there is a 36, 35, but to the wrong side, meaning that there are 36 that are convicting and 35 that are acquitting. And 1 second, okay. Right. Right. So he says, what do they do? So the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, are you with me? It's froze. Darren?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, it froze for a second.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says clearly that let's say there is a Beit Din of 23 and they see that the case is hard, so they add and add and add till they get to 71. And if there is this situation of 36 convicting and 35 acquitting, so you see that only that the need to continue to discuss till one of the people who are convicting will be convinced by the one that are acquitting. And then there's going to be 36 against 35 to acquit, and that's fine. But what do you see? That the Mishnah does not offer the solution of continuing to add on. So you see that a 71 is a set number. So how come Rabbi Yonatan here says that there is a scenario of 100 people that were in the Beit Din and were ruling an earned ruling. The Rambam is actually posek halacha l'maaseh that Sanhedrin, he says clearly in Hilchos Sanhedrin that one is not allowed to that they're unable to add to 71, but rather the acquitting people will convince one of the people who are convicting, and that way the thing will be resolved. So Rabbi Yonatan is against this thing, and the Rambam rules l'chora against it. Right. So Rav Soloveitchik wanted to say that there are two roles of Beit Din HaGadol. Beit Din HaGadol is, on the one hand, a representative of Klal Yisrael. Let's say when they're doing all kinds of things, appointing a king. Beit Din HaGadol is appointing a king. He's doing it as a representative of Klal Yisrael. He's doing Kiddush HaChodesh, as we say, all kinds of stuff. And there's also, he needs to establish the halacha. And he wanted to say that in one row, in one hat of the Sanhedrin, they could have even 100. The more, he wanted to say that in the more formal one, they can't add. That's like a set number of 71. But in, let's say, establishing halacha, they are able to add. And this is actually our case where they're establishing halacha, and here they can add. There's a problem with Rav Soloveitchik's teretz, a big problem. It's very brilliant, and he shows in his shir the differences of the two hats of the Sanhedrin as a representative of Klal Yisrael and as the higher hierarchy. And the other one is the one that is responsible for keeping the tradition, the oral Torah, establishing the oral Torah. The only problem is with his chiluk is that it's hard to say it in the Rambam, because the Rambam, when he says that you can't add, he speaks more about establishing the halacha. Yeah, he speaks about or ruling as a Beit Din. Okay. At any rate, let's continue the review of our Gemara. I mentioned it not just we will use maybe later on in the shir this distinction between the two roles of the Beit Din and regarding the number. So one chiddush is referring to the number, but the bigger problem is the other chiddush. Rabbi Yonatan says that not only that you could have a Beit Din of 100 of Sanhedrin, but that in order to be obligated with the bull, you need that it will be unanimous. Because in order for it to be defined as a shgaga of Klal Yisrael, then you actually need unanimous. You can't follow the majority ruling. And then the Gemara attacks him. The Gemara attacks him from several sources. The last one, if you remember, was regarding Gzeira. And here I want to read with you again the Gemara, because we read it really pretty quickly at the end. So please kindly find Mativ Rav Misharshia. Okay, where is Mativ Rav Misharshia? Mativ Rav Misharshia is pretty much in the middle of the page, a little higher than the middle of the page. Mativ Rav Misharshia, Samchu Rabotenu. Everyone has the spot?
Yeah.
What? Reuven, Darren, you have it? The Mativ Rav Misharshia? Mickey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Daniel, Mickey, do you have it?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and Daniel, you have it. Very good. So Mativ Rav Misharshia. Rav Misharshia is...
I just, what I saw is what I sent you.
That's not the right number.
Mativ Rav Misharshia. Yeah, Mativ Rav Misharshia. I'm reading. Mativ Rav Misharshia, wait a minute, I lost the place myself. Okay, yeah, Mativ Rav Misharshia. Samchu Rabotenu al divrei Rashbag val divrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok shayu omrim ein gozrin gzera al hatzibur ela im ken rov hatzibur yecholim la'amod ba. Okay, our rabbis relied on Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's wordings that they said that one cannot make a decree on the people of Israel, some gzera, unless the majority of the people can actually hold to it. If the majority of Am Yisrael cannot hold to the gzera, then the gzera is not valid. That's a very fundamental statement. Now, there is a machlokus between rabbis. I'm just saying that as a parenthetical remark. And what does it mean? Does it mean that, let's say a Beit Din made a gzera? Let's say a Beit Din issued a decree, and the Tzibur of Israel didn't accept it. The majority of the Tzibur of Israel didn't accept it. Then is it canceled, nullified automatically, meaning it was never valid? Or no, the gzera is there, only now a second Beit Din, even if it's smaller and less wise, can cancel it. Because we have a rule that when a Beit Din issues a decree to Klal Yisrael, let's say a Sanhedrin issues a decree to Klal Yisrael, the only way, and let's say the decree was accepted by the people of Israel, then let's say if later on in generations, a different Beit Din thinks that it's a good idea to cancel that gzera, then the way to do it is only if it's bigger than the previous Beit Din in Chochmah u'Minyan, qualitatively and quantitatively, okay? I won't go into this sugya. I'm just saying that this statement in our sugya that says that a gzera, Beit Din is not issuing a gzera unless the majority of Israel could hold to it, could have two meanings. Either that if a Beit Din issued a gzera, a decree, and it didn't spread with the majority of Israel, then it's automatically nullified, canceled, meaning it didn't hold. Or no, since the Beit Din issued it, it holds, but even a smaller Beit Din can now, or should now, cancel it. At any rate, be it this way or that way, where do they learn this din? That in order for a gzera to be valid, in order for a gzera to be valid, you need to it needs to be accepted by the majority of the people of Israel. Where do they learn this from? So there is a verse, Maikra, B'me'era atem noarim, v'oti atem kov'im hagoy kulo. It's like, this is a rebuke in Malachi, and the rebuke says the following: you are making zeros, me'era atem noarim, you are making zeros, v'oti atem kov'im, but you're not following these zeros, and that's bad. Hagoy kulo. And when is all this talking about? This rebuke that you made a gzera and then you're not following it, and that's bad, that's a sin, because the gzera is valid. That's why, since the gzera is valid, the fact that the people are not following it is a sin. So, b'meiratim nu'arim, you're making a gzera, v'otiatem kovim, and yet still don't follow it. Hagoy kulo. All of this is only when all the people of Israel accepted it. Hagoy here doesn't mean goy, Gentile. Goy means the nation. In our parsha, Parshat Lech Lecha, we have it in the second pasuk. It says in our parsha that we'll read tomorrow, Vayomer Hashem el Avram. Hashem told Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladcha u'mibeit avicha. Go out of your land, Ela Aretz Asher Areka, to the land that I'll show you. Be'escha legoy gadol, and I'll make out of you, says Hashem to Abraham, I'll make out of you a goy gadol, a big goy. So did he tell him, I'll make out of you a big Gentile? No, that wasn't the meaning. It means I'll make a big nation out of you. So goy in the Tanakh means many times nation. So here in Malachi, that's the meaning of the word goy here. You are making a decree, and then you sin and don't follow it. And when is all this true? Hagoy kulo, when all the nation accepted that decree. Then indeed it's considered a sin that you're not following it because the decree is valid. So you see here that it says here, Hagoy kulo. So the Gemara says, and here in this pasuk, it's written, Dichtiv Hagoy kulo. And still Roba Kakul Yadami, and you see and you see still that the Gemara, the law of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said that it's enough that the majority of the people of Israel didn't accept the decree, that the decree is not valid. So you see that the terminology is, it says all the nation, and yet still it means most of the nation.
When you say accept, it means that they.
Darren, they're assuming that when it's the majority of the nation, it's as if it's all the nation. Yes, Darren.
Is it they didn't like accept it, or they didn't do it? Is there a differential if, like, philosophically they didn't agree with it, or they just decided, like, we're just not doing it? Is there a difference, or it's the same thing?
I don't. Here we don't see a difference. Here we see that in order that a decree, not a Torah law, that a decree of Beit Din will have validity, will have halachic validity, there must be an acceptance of the Jewish people. Now, of course, we're talking about a situation where the Jewish people is a people that is accepting the yoke of halacha. Okay, we're not talking about the modern situation of majority of Jews that are not accepting the yoke of halacha. You need to understand, this is one of the big problems that our sources are not really, since they were written, the Gemara and the Mishnah, and even many of the Rishonim were written before the modern era, before the Enlightenment, before the Western movement of secularization. Okay, therefore, all of our sources are assuming that Am Yisrael is an Am that is accepting, that the tzibur is a tzibur of accepting generally the yoke of halacha. Now, that kind of tzibur, if for some reason the decree didn't spread in that tzibur, then it's not valid. That's what's written. How do I relate to Am Yisrael when there is a secularization process? That's the $1 million question that all of our thinkers and rabbis are still trying to figure out good solutions for that. It's a 100, 200-year problem. This gap that in Jewish identity, that now we definitely have halachic Jews in the sense that their mother is Jewish, and yet still the majority of the tzibur, and that's a big change, is a tzibur that is not part of the tzibur that are accepting the yoke of halacha. Okay, so that is a big problem that is beyond the scope of this class. Okay, here we're just saying that we have a law. Okay, for the purposes of our sugya, Rabbi Yonatan proved from the word Kol Adat Yisrael. It wasn't written Vim Adat Yisrael Yishnu, and if the people of Israel will err, it was if all the people of Israel will err. So he said, why is there a superfluous word, an extra word of all, to tell you that here majority is not enough. Here you need a unanimous ruling of Beit Din. Yeah, that was the din of Rabbi Yonatan. That was his inference from the verse. So here the Gemara challenges him and says, here you have the same terminology. It says all the nation, that the decree is valid only if all the nation accepted it. And yet still we interpret it that it means majority, because majority is as if it's all. All right? So the same here in our case of the bull, when it says all the Beit Din will make the ruling, all means majority. Okay? So that was a knockout. Yeah, the Gemara concluded and said that's a rejection of the opinion of Rabbi Yonatan. Okay? Now, it seemed from the flow of the pasuk, of the flow of the sugya, that what was rejected, the first din of Rabbi Yonatan or the second din? The first din of the fact that one can add more dayanim, or the second din that you need a unanimous ruling. Well, it's very, very clear from the flow of the Gemara that they're challenging the question of whether I consider majority as all. So they're not touching his chiddush of the 100. What they're attacking is the fact that he requires a unanimous ruling, because rubo kechulu, that's the pshat of the sugya. Let's continue. The Gemara continues and says, Amar Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, this is now, these are a few lines that we didn't read last week. Amar Rabbi Yoshua. 10 people, Yud, Sheyoshvin Bedin, 10 people that are sitting in the din, Kolar Talui B'Tzavar Kulan. If there are 10 people serving as a Beit Din, then they're all responsible for the ruling. They're all responsible for the ruling. Kolar Talui B'Tzavar Kulan. Darren, how does a Rabbi Art Scroll translate the word kolar? Please?
I'm not sure.
A chain. Something like Rabbi Yeshua says, 10 people that are sitting in the case. Kolar talui b'tzavar kulan. There is a chain in the neck of all of them, meaning that they're all responsible. So now the Gemara asks, Pshita, okay, that is clear. What is the chiddush here? Hakamashmalan. Then the Gemara answers. The Gemara says, even a Talmud in front of his Rav, meaning not only that if there is a mistake there, all are responsible. Furthermore, even if there is a student that is worthy, of course, that is sitting in front of them and is part of the discussion, even though he is not, or he could have, he is there in order to check them, to check on them, to discuss with them. And let's say he didn't protest or whatever. And by the way, when I say didn't protest, not that he knew when he was quiet, even that he was mistaken like them. So just like they have responsibilities for mistake, even he has responsibility for the mistake. Ravuna, when he was going out, nafik lebeitina, when he was going out to the Beit Din, then he would bring 2 more students, Tanai de Beirav, people that were saying Mishnayos or whatever in the house of Rav, in front of him. Kiechi de Nimtian Shiva Mikshora. Okay, we need to translate this. Okay, so I'll, 1 second. I'll translate this to you. Yeah, he says, when he was going to sit in the Beit Din, he will bring 10 Talmidei Chachamim, and he was said, that is because that if I will make a mistake, if I'll make a mistake, I want the punishment on my own. Rather, it will be like a Shiva Mikashora. Shiva is, what falls off, a little pieces of wood that are falling out of a big rod of wood. Neshoet.
This says chip of the beam.
Right, chip of the beam, exactly. And now can you see again what is kolar betzavaro? That's like 1 row on top of it or 2 rows on top of it. Kolar talui betzavar kulan. Rabbi Yushia says 10 that are sitting in the din, the previous statement. It's as if the rope is the rope of the hanging is chain
It's an entire assembly. Entire.
Look at Amar Rabbi Yoshua, Darren. 1 or 2 rows on top of Rav Huna that you just translated from. Rabbi Yoshua said, 10 that are sitting in the judgment, in the din, It's as if the rope of the hanging is around the neck of all of them. Okay, forget it. It's I think we translated it okay. At any rate, look at what Rav Huna was doing. Rav Huna, in order to spread the punishment, so when he was walking out to the judgment, the Beit Din, he would take with him 10 Talmidei Chachamim, so that the punishment for a mistake will be spread. He'll get only 1/11 of it, and not the entire thing. Rav Ashi. Yes, Darren, do you want to say something?
Yeah, it says a chain hangs around the neck of all of them.
Ah, you see, so that's what I said. Okay, I should just trust myself more. Rav Ashi, when when someone would bring to him a shaila regarding kosher food, let's say a behema, to decide, to rule, meat, and remember, that's a lot of money involved. Let's say a butcher would bring to him a meat, whether it's a treifa or not, whether it's kosher or not. He would bring 2 other people that were tabachi, that were people who were baki, that were knowledgeable, experts in deciding regarding animals, regarding the food, whether the animal, whether it's treifa or not. He would bring them out from Mata Mechasia, from the city of Mechasia, because there were there 10 shechters, people that are shechting, that were skilled to decide regarding these kinds of shilas. And he would sit and he would place them in front of him. And he said, I'm doing that so that if I'll be mistaken, that the punishment that I'll receive will be only how did he say it? From the beam? The
chip.
The chip
Chip
of the beam. Chip from the beam. So we see here, I assume the Gemara added these statements because after there was the statement of Rabbi Yonatan that says that in order to have the din of the bull, of the public bull, you need a unanimous ruling. And not only that you need unanimous ruling, that Rabbi Yonatan claims that one can add more dayanim. So just associatively, since Rabbi Yonatan spoke about adding more than 71, so the Gemara brought how dayanim were indeed adding people, and they were adding people in order to spread the responsibility. Okay?
Are we saying then that you can add anybody to a base din regardless of their qualifications? These are not rebbeim; these are butchers.
Right. So
I would have assumed they were being added because of their expertise, not so much to dilute responsibility, but so that the base din would make the correct decision.
Fantastic. Thank you, Reuven. Rav Lichtenstein quotes the Rambam, okay, that speaks about adding dayanim. And the Rambam says that the addition for dayanim is exactly for what Reuven says here. I'll read you the wordings. You know what? I can even share with you the screen. Why should I just read you?
Are they being added to the Beth Din, or are they being added as witnesses?
Very good. Here it seems that they're
Expert
added,
witnesses.
What?
Are they being added as expert witnesses or actually on the Beth Din?
So we would assume that, Darren, we would assume that they're expert. We would say intuitively that he's bringing them as witnesses. Okay. However, I must. Okay. And you know what? I was about to say that. However, the Gemara says that they're added as part of Beidin. Okay, but I'm wrong. Darren is right. And here, Reuven, that answers one of your 2 questions. Okay.
But if they're witnesses, why would they be partially responsible for a mistake?
Reuven, bear with me for a second and then ask. Reuven made, actually, in his first initial comment, there were 2 comments folded in that I'll distinguish between. But I want now to address one of them, please. And that is that, as Darren said here, L'chora bringing, Reuven asked, do I need any qualifications to add to Beit Din? Could I just add anyone? Or do I need qualifications? Here he added butchers, but they're not rabbis, okay? And Darren continued it. It says, is it bringing expert witnesses, or part of Beit Din? So here, I'll tell you, what did we see in the beginning of the Gemara here? That the Gemara started, look, there is a certain graduality here, development in the sugya. Please look with me. In the beginning, Rabbi Yoshua. The first statement is Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua says, 10 that are sitting in the judgment, the chain is around the neck of all of them. So here we're talking about 10 members of Beit Din, 10 dayanim. That's how it starts. Okay, makes sense. And then the Gemara says, this is simple. Of course, anyone was actually part of the Beit Din, of the quorum, is carrying the responsibility. What is the innovation of the Gemara? And then the Gemara says, no, that even a student that was in front of them, meaning he wasn't part of the quorum of the Beit Din, only 10 issued the ruling, but there was a student, a qualified student in their presence to learn and to suggest, and okay, he is also carrying the responsibility for the mistake. And then, so we already here see that the Gemara says explicitly that the spreading of the responsibility is not only between the formal judges of the case, but also of the people that are around them that are part of the process, that could have contributed to the decision. And then, therefore, the next thing is that Ravuna says, when I'm going to Beit Din, I'm bringing with me 10 Talmidei Chachamim to sit in front of me so that they will also carry their responsibility. Now, to sit in front of me doesn't mean that they're becoming part of the Beit Din. Maybe he came to Beit Din and there were 2 Dayanim with him there, but he brought 10 students that there will be like that student that is sitting in front of his rabbi, and he's also carrying part of the responsibility. And then the next and final statement is Rav Ashi. And when he's ruling regarding animals, whether they're shechted animals, whether they're treifa or not, he's bringing these experts, Darren, so that they will also carry the responsibility. Meaning, even though they're not dayanim, Reuven, I'm saying, even though, since they're not rabbis, these 10 experts that he brought from Mechassia, 10 butchers that were experts, these 10 butchers are definitely not part of the Beit Din. They're not dayanim, but he brings them as experts. He decides about the shaila with their consultation, and then the responsibility for the mistake spreads. Not only he carries it, they also carry responsibility to the mistake. Okay? So I think
the Dayan is also not a butcher.
What?
That's why he needs them.
What?
The Dayanim are not usually butchers.
Right, that's why they need them. And that's exactly, and that is exactly following us to the next step of Reuven. Okay? Here I'm going to the second claim of Reuven that I supported from Rav Lichtenstein and the Rambam, as I'll show in a second. Okay? So I'm just making here distinctions. Hey, who's qualified to be in Beit Din? Of course, only rabbis are only people that are well-learned are qualified to be in Beit Din. And here we're not talking about these experts being part of the Beit Din. We're talking that they were there, just like the student that was sitting in front of his rabbi, even though he was not a dayan in this case. And we say that the responsibility spreads among everyone there that is involved. Now, the next step is Reuven says, here it's presented in the sugya that the addition of dayanim is only in order to spread the responsibility of mistake. But actually, there is the more basic reason. I'm bringing the experts and adding people, perhaps, whether they're experts or not, in order to improve the probability of reaching the correct decision. Nahon Reuven. That's what you said.
Yes.
Right. So you're definitely right. And I'll show it in the Rambam. Now, you beforehand wanted to make a comment, and then I asked you just to let me finish the sentence. What did you want to say, Reuven? Like,
That's okay. I think you addressed it already.
what? I addressed it? Okay,
Yeah.
good. So now let's share the screen to show this basic thing that here in our Gemara, the addition of experts or dayanim or students is in order to spread the responsibility of the mistake. But actually, there is a more basic reason. We're adding people so that to improve the probability that the decision will be correct. Actually, just before I show the source supporting that, we could actually say that the two things are very intertwined. Meaning, maybe here, the way the rabbis speak in our sugya is, I'm taking 10 Talmidei Chachamim so that if I'll make a mistake, the responsibility will spread. But actually, the thing is that since I don't want mistakes, I want to avoid mistakes, so I'm taking more people. And that way, I will avoid mistakes. And if there's still going to be one, then at least it's going to spread. So maybe they didn't say the first part because it's like needless to say. You see that I'm afraid, I'm concerned for mistakes. So I'm doing the actions in order to avoid them. And if they're done already, that their responsibility will be spread. So I'm sharing with you for a second the screen here. And wait a minute, I'm rolling it down, 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 down. Right, let's look. The Kesef Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch, claims, the Kesef Mishnah claims that our sugya is the source for Maimonides for the following ruling in Hilchos Sanhedrin. Let's look at the Kesef Mishnah. I remind you, the Kesef Mishnah is the Shulchan Aruch. Here, look. You see this? Here, I'll make the letters a little bigger. Afal Pishe Beidin, the Rambam rules in Hilchos Sanhedrin. Even though Beidin of 3 is a complete Beidin, it's a valid, kosher, complete Beidin, as long as there are many, this is better. It's preferable. And it's better that the din, the ruling, will be decided by 11 more than 10. 11 is better than 10. And you need that the ones that are sitting in the Beidin are all worthy, qualified Talmidei Chachamim. So what do you see? That the Rambam says that it's meshubach, that it's better. Now, l'chora, why is the Rambam saying that it's meshubach, that it's better? It seems one second. Right, okay, I'm sorry. So first of all, so the Rambam just says that it's better, it's meshubach. Here, I'm going back to the Rambam's language. that it's meshubach to add dayanim. All right? It's a meshubach that the decision, and look at that. In our sugya, the only thing that it says that the more people you have discussing, then the responsibility is more spread out. That's what's written in our sugya, okay? But therefore, our sugya doesn't even talk about adding people to the Beit-Din. It's also adding students who are present, okay, or experts. The Rambam says more. He says that the decision is better if there are more dayanim deciding. It's meshubach, okay? Now, why? Is he talking only like our sugi about responsibility? He doesn't say anything. And after from the fact that he doesn't say anything, it seems that he means what Reuven said, that it's better that the decision is decided by more people because that increases the probability that it's a good and correct decision. We see it even more clearer in Nachmanides. Rambam said that it's meshubach, only that it's better. Nachmanides says something more. Let me see. Let me read Nachmanides and make the letters bigger. Nachmanides, Ramban, speaks in the beginning of Sefer Dvarim, and he says the following. Here, I'll make the letters bigger. Let's make the letters bigger, because it's small letters. Remember, that's the first pasuk in the Sheni of Parshas Dvarim. And Rashi says, Torchachem, Moshe complains and says, that he wants to add more judges, not to the quorum, but they have a whole system of judicial system. Yeah. Moshe describes what happened when Yitro came in, and without mentioning Yitro. So he said, how can I carry the burden of all of you? You're tircha, you're making tircha. And what is the tircha? Melamed shayu tarchanin. Haya echad mehem roed bal dino notzech badin. One would have seen his enemy, the one that is against him, going to win in the din. And he says, I have witnesses to be. I have more proofs. And then he says, Mosifani alechem dayanim. I require to add more dayanim. Meaning someone sees, let's say there is a baiting of 3. We have a monetary dispute. Let's say me and Darren. We have an argument, a monetary argument. We go to a baiting of 3, which is okay. I see that Darren is about to win. And then I'm telling, hey, I'm requiring to add more judges to the quorum. Then, says Nachmanides, that's one of the interpretations that he gives to Moshe's claim to the people of Israel. I said, how can I carry your troublemaking, your tircha? The tircha was that they were always, when they saw that they're about to lose, they would claim to add judges. Now, Ramban continues and says, Ve'adin hazeh, and this din, that one is able to demand to add dayanim, I don't know, I didn't find the source for it, that the Baal Din, he comments on Rashi. Rashi says this. And he says, this din, I don't know what's the source, I don't know it. That one of the people in the case can demand to add judges more than the 3 in Dinei Mamonot. And Kal V'chomer that he's able to make such a demand after he already claimed in front of them and after he saw that his opponent is about to win him. He says, because regarding kosher dayanim, he can't withdraw. And maybe we can learn from here, he says, and perhaps we can learn from here that sheyachol adam lomar, that a person can say, I am choosing two dayanim, and you're choosing other 2 dayanim. And these other 2 dayanim, they would select a 5th one. And then the din will be decided by 5 or more, as they said, and here he quotes from the sages, a din that is decided by 5 is not similar to a din that is decided by 10. And even though 3 people, kosher dayanim, have the authority to coerce someone to come, let's say you come to a kosher beit din and Darren comes to a kosher beit din and sues me. And I'm not rushing to come in front of them. So they have, if there are 3 kosher dayanim, they have the authority to coerce me to come to in front of them for the case. So even though 3 is a complete beit din that has an authority even of coercion to come to the case, to attend the case, but if one wants to select more, he's allowed to do that. He has a right to demand to select more. Ramban says perhaps not when the din is already completed, as Rashi said, but generally, one can say 3 are not enough for me to begin with. He says, I'm asking to make a bigger beit din. He says, perhaps you could be attentive to such a request. It's not a demand when it doesn't involve too much of a tircha. Because this is a commandment, tzedek, tzedek tirdof. What is tzedek, tzedek tirdof? Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, one of the interpretations is follow a good beit din. And a lot of chachamim is a good beit din. Look at that. Reuven, here you found what you were looking for. Whereas our sugya talks about spreading responsibility, and therefore doesn't speak only about the members of the beit din, speaks about all the people around, involved, okay, etc. Here, Nachmanides speaks about the right of each side of the case to request a bigger beit din, and that we should be attentive to it, to add dayanim. But why? Because this is considered a beit din yafeh, a beautiful beit din, literally, a good beit din. Because as he says, that's tzedek, tzedek tirdof. That is increasing the probability. Yeah, what is tzedek, tzedek tirdof? Right, or truthful or righteous, the tzedek, the truth, you should pursue it. So pursuing the truth, pursuing the tzedek, what is right, pursuing the right decision, is part of it is by adding more judges. And that's what he says, Ribui Chachamim, Beit Din Yafeh. Yeah, a better Beit Din is a Beit Din that has more judges. So here we found this aspect that Reuven was talking about in Nachmanides. Okay, we have 6 more minutes. And here I want to present you, and we'll continue next week and then go Bezrat Hashem to our next Mishnah.
One question, excuse me.
Yes, please, Reuven.
You know, the one thing I don't see here is what do they really gain by diffusing responsibility? After all, under Torah law, your punishment is not different because you have a lot of accomplices.
Look, I understand it very literally, Reuven, and tell me if it answers you. A dayan issued a psak, okay? And the psak is wrong. So let's say a Jew, a Yid, came to Rav Ashi, and he asked about a certain animal that was shechted. And Rav Ashi told him that it's kosher. And it turned out that really, in objective truth, God knows that it wasn't kosher. So Rav Ashi feels that he carries some of responsibility for the fact that this poor Jew now ate objectively a non-kosher food. Lehefich, the poor Jew probably has very little responsibility, if at all. Right? He is a simple Jew that is following his Rav. Maybe he's an honest. We considered even the option that he's defined an honest and not a shogeg. Rav Ashi is also a shogeg, but he's definitely not an anus. He's a shogeg. So he carries he feels he carries responsibility. Now, if 11 people are deciding it together, then since it's a group decision, then the concept is that, I'll make it very metaphorical. Eating a non-kosher animal, let's say, creates a metaphysical damage of 100 kilo. Okay, eating a non-kosher food, there is a metaphysical damage to the world. Okay, because that's how of 100 kilo. Now, if Rav Ashi himself would have said to the Jew, only on his own, go eat that meat, it's kosher, then he's responsible to 100 kilo. But if there are 11 people together ruling this, or Rav Ashi's ruling it, but with a consultation of 10 experts, then it's still 100 kilo damage. It's not more than 100 kilo. But now the contribution of each one is less. That's the concept of the Gemara here. Okay? That's the way they see it. That or go to the other way around. Rav Ashi, again, a poor Jew came to him and asked him about an animal. And actually the objective truth that the animal was kosher. And Rav Ashi mistakenly told him that it's not kosher. So we had to throw it to the garbage. Now that's a big, big loss of money. So Rav Ashi now is responsible for this mistake. He actually caused a very serious monetary damage to that Jew. Okay? Now that monetary damage is worth 100 shekel. Now, if it's Rav Ashi alone, that he's alone responsible for that monetary loss of 100 shekel. But if 11 people were involved in the decision process by this way or another, or even were students that were sitting in front of him silent, but they were present there, then already he is not alone responsible for this entire 100 shekel. 100 shekel is divided between the people somehow. Okay? So
Is it written that the base team has to compensate
now compensation, the sugya of compensation of Beit Din is a very big and important sugya. It's a sugya in Sanhedrin, okay? Regarding when is a dayan responsible and when he is not, okay? We need to understand that in some levels, of course, the distinction is between the nature of the mistake, yeah? Because as you can assume, Reuven, there is here an issue of what we'll call professional insurance, okay? Meaning, if you will obligate a dayan for any mistake he does, that's a problem, yeah? We want dayanim have, we can't really obligate any dayan to compensate, always. So we really, the Sugya in Sanhedrin makes distinction between nature of mistakes. If the mistake is a very basic one, let's say, he read a Mishnah wrong, the dayan, then he will have to compensate, probably. But if it was a poor judgment, for instance, then maybe he has that insurance, okay? We'll have to, it's a big sugya. I'm just throwing it out. It's a sugya on its own. It's beyond our scope here. Okay. At any rate, I think I answered the question regarding the spreading of responsibility. I see the time is now 10 o'clock, so I think it's not right to start now a whole new thing. So we'll finish here and we'll continue next week. As you've seen, we reached the Mishnah, the next Mishnah in Gimel Amud Bet, the last third of Gimel Amud Bet. But I'm not sure we're going to start it next week because we need to explain this ruling of a need for unanimous ruling for who's speaking here? What? The need for unanimous ruling in order to be obligated a public bull. It seems that it was rejected from our sugya. Our sugya ended up with stating that even if the majority of the Sanhedrin ruled it, then it's already a public mistake because rubo kechulo, a majority is like all. However, there is a problem because we have sources that seem to contradict it. We have sources that seem that actually Rabbi Yonatan's din was somewhat accepted. So we'll have to understand the meaning of it. By the way, one could have claimed also a middle opinion that you need all 71, not merely majority of 71, but then if the Beit Din, the quorum is 100, then you don't need all the 100. And this is perhaps what was rejected by Sugya, meaning the Sugya, the simple wordings of our Sugya is that Rabbi Yonatan was rejected. And that just as I proved that kol regarding zeros, kol means majority, then kol adat Israel here means majority. And by the way, indeed, we never require that all the people of Israel will eat the chalev. We're enough with the majority. And actually, Rav Lichtenstein asks a big question and leaves it without an answer. I'm giving it to, why is our sugya running to bring a proof from from a different area of Gzeros, and like that Gzera is valid only if the enough that a majority of the Jews of Israel didn't accept it. Bring from our case the fact that you don't require that all the people will sin, but only the majority of Am Yisrael will sin. That should have been enough to prove it, to make an analogy to Beit Din, just like you made it an example for the spreading of all people of Israel. That's a big question. It's a big question. But at any rate, the simple sugya says that since you proved that majority is like all, so also regarding the ruling of Sanhedrin in order to be obligated in public bull, majority is like all. However, in a more dochak, well, that's the simple pshat of the sugya, of our sugya. But one could have claimed that perhaps the sugya only said that regarding 100 people, a majority is enough. You don't need all the 100 people. And this statement of Rabbi Yonatan was rejected. Rabbi Yonatan said, if the quorum is 100, you need all the 100 because kol adat Israel. So they say, no, the word kol doesn't prove because rubo kakulo. But perhaps still, for some reason, we need at least 71 that are unanimous. And if for this, we don't need, we're not enough with majority. Why? We'll see. Again, it's not the pshat of the sugya. Okay. I'm just saying that technically, one could have maybe kvetched this understanding to our sugya, that still you need 71 unanimous. Okay, Chaverim, litraot.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.